Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of The Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, Quinn. At least that's how I'm known here on the program. I'm back here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, and more for another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of ECM Collective. I almost said Underground Music Collective, but we're not that anymore. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Of course, if you like the show, if you follow the show, follow it, subscribe to it, share it, comment on it, tell your friends. If you don't like it, tell your enemies. Just give us that engagement. That helps us grow and spread the message. You heard, of course, Revel 9's All I've Become at the top of the show. That's been our opening theme song since the great year of 2014. And it will be until the very end of days. And we're back here on the interview set as we start to wind into the final stages of 2023. Can't believe it's almost over. Year 10 officially ends very soon, but before that happens, I have Shawney Rainne joining us. Hello. Shawney is a musician, artist, entrepreneur, fashion enthusiast. Like, you do so much.
Wear a lot of hats.
Wear a lot of hats, and of course we're going to get into that, but before I go any further, I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourself on your terms. And I ask every guest of the show 3 standard questions. Feel free to answer these however you'd like. Those 3 questions are, who are you? What are your passions, and why on earth would you want to come on the Quinn Spinn?
Okay, well, hello. I am Shawney Rainne. I am everything you just said. I'm an artist, an entrepreneur, and a fashion enthusiast. I really identify as a creative, like an overall creative. I just like to create. And so that leads into a lot of different opportunities and avenues. What were the other questions?
Well, your passions. You pretty much covered that.
Okay, cool.
So that was number 2. Number 3 was, why on earth would you want to come on this show of all the shows?
Because I love our conversations. We have some really amazing conversations about branding, about just building and developing yourself as who you are. Mm-hmm. So that can be an artist, entrepreneur, business owner, all those things. Mm-hmm. And so I was really excited to be here because we have some great conversations already.
I'm excited to have you here. And full disclosure, Shawney is part of our ECM Academy. So that's where a lot of these conversations come from. And watching your growth throughout the year, which we're going to get to, has been really tremendous and inspiring to kind of see the journey that you've been on, you know, both in life and how that informs, you know, where you're going creatively. But before we start to look at that stuff, we're going to get to that and all the cool things we've been talking about in the process. But I want to go a little further back, as far back as you want to go, as a matter of fact. So we usually go from the beginning, whatever you consider that to be, as far as the formative experiences, influences, events, people, places that shaped you and inspired you to go on this creative path.
Yeah. So I would say my true beginning is 2020. I baptized myself spiritually in Percy Priest. And I renamed myself Shawney Rainne. So Rainne symbolizes rebirth and baptism for me. And I kind of needed to step away from who I had been, which was, you know, very consumed by self-hate, depression, you know, wanting so badly to be this person, but not having the confidence to step in and start that journey. And so I had decided, you know, enough was enough. And so I grew up Christian. And so my minds, I symbolized baptism with that rebirth and that, you know, washing away the old and stepping into the new. And so that was the beginning of my journey. I would say it did start before then because I had to get to that point, but I don't like to really reflect and go back there because, like, I really like to exist in this new form of self.
You're focused on who you are now.
Yes, and who I'm becoming.
And who you're becoming.
Yes.
And I think we all, you know, go through those various pivot points where, like, the old us, you know, for lack of a better term, not to be morbid, kind of dies, right? And
they have to,
you know, goes away in favor of, you know, the blessings that await us, the life that awaits us. There are things that we need to let go of.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's things about our past, whether that's our own egoic hangups, right? That, like, we get trapped in. And if we hold on to those things, then it prevents us from growing. I was just this past weekend, as of recording, at a conference in Denver, and the opening talk, like the opening intro before the keynote speaker came on, told a story about a monkey holding on to a moldy, stinky peanut And no matter what, he wouldn't let go of it even when his life was in danger.
Oh my goodness.
And all he had to do to save himself was let go of the peanut, because something was coming after him for it. And he just had to let go of it and go on and go about his way. But the things that we hold on to can really destroy us.
Hurt,
you know?
yeah.
And I don't know if I botched that story, but that's what I got out of it, was like, if there's something you're holding on to that, isn't serving you anymore, you need to let it go. And I think we all get to those points in our lives.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how I felt. I felt like if I didn't let go of the pain in the past that I was holding on to, then eventually it would consume me, and I was more afraid of that than I was of, taking the step to, start the journey essentially, and you're 100% right. Like, we hold on to things that don't serve us, and for some reason we've convinced ourselves that that's it for us, like we have to carry these burdens, and we really don't. We really don't. And I think the first step is realizing that, and once you realize it, you can kind of maneuver and start that path of your spiritual journey is what I call it. And I think that's a beautiful thing once you start that. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's easier than the other.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes too, the things that keep us holding on it's like the fear of letting go, right? It's the fear of something that's new, and there's comfort in even the worst routines. I can tell you, over the past 5 years of my life, that's definitely a lesson that's kept showing up, that I've witnessed in myself, that I've witnessed in other people, where we can know something's not working for us, but we can keep doing it anyway because we don't know what else to do.
Yeah. And to add to that, for me, it was the fear of failure. So I was afraid that if I tried, I would prove myself right. And ultimately, me trying wasn't enough, and I would be right about feeling unworthy. So it's like these tricks that we play on ourselves mentally, and that fear of, being right all along, we're not worthy, traps us. And it prevents us from doing anything. And I know for me, I was afraid of that. I was afraid of not being worthy or capable of all these things. And it's just like, how do you know if you don't give yourself that chance?
Yeah. And I think you have to get to a point too where you're more afraid of things staying the same than you are of them changing. That's something that showed up for me about 5 years ago this month when I was getting ready to move to Nashville. I didn't want things to stay the way they were. That scared me more than just like packing up my car and going to a place where I literally knew 2 people.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I agree with that so much. It's terrifying, like being stagnant.
Yeah.
That really sucks.
Yeah. And so that fear just has to grow to the point where like you can't accept that anymore. It's like, I'll take my chances out here with whatever comes. And definitely challenges are going to, approach you, confront you even along the way. And certainly, since your rebirth, since 2020, you've, I'm sure, encountered some of those as you've navigated this new state, this new place in life, right? So what are some of the challenges that the journey has introduced to you over the past few years, and how have those informed the creative side?
Oh my goodness. Where do I start? No one told me how hard it would be to start a business.
Nobody does.
And also, I guess, a multifaceted business, because like as an artist, let's just start there. You wear all of the hats, you have to figure out the content, the algorithm, marketing, promotion and sales, and the business side, and all of these things, and who's a shark and who's actually trying to help you and has your best interest. So that was the biggest learning curve for me, is how to move forwards without burning out. And I, at one point, just put my artistry to the side, and then I just started focusing on really helping other artists. And that was through the platform EBCM, Everything But Country Music. And I learned a lot through that as well, but it had that same burnout because it's still a business. A lot of levels and a lot to do. So
and everyone's coming to you for something, which I know plenty about. Yeah.
Yes. Everybody kind of wanted something. And, you know, early on, I didn't have the heart to set boundaries. So I said yes to everything. And it just was impossible to juggle everything. And I wouldn't say the business failed, but I burned out. And you can't run and operate a business if you're burned out when you don't have anybody else there really solid enough to like take the baton for a bit. You know, so that was definitely my biggest hurdle. And then learning how to, like, you know, be myself, you know, exist as who I am, and then also as a entrepreneur and a business woman, you know, like that I had to really learn, because I have these two sides. Like, I have the business side that's a little bit more, you know, I like type A is probably the easiest description of it, more like on top of things. And then I have my creative side, who has to have this space to exist as well, you know, because that's normal and natural for, like, to me, you know, and it allows me to continue to be me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think too, in the music industry, really in any creative industry, like, there is that sense of like, we need to be super giving, right? And we need to give all the time. And it can be very hard to set boundaries, because, like, I feel like the stigma of the industry and the whole, you know, mystique surrounding the starving artist is, well, you're supposed to give everything away because they're starving artists. And how dare you charge what you're worth? Like, I've run into that mentality a lot. And I've run into that mentality of really, you know, a lot of artists, like, thinking that they don't have the means, thinking they can't produce the means. Like, it's really like a systemic, like, endemic thing within the music industry, within any arts and creative space, where, like, people don't feel like they have the resources to invest in themselves. So when people like you and I are just coming in and offering things for free or cheap or whatever, you know, as I've had to learn myself, it's like, you're doing a nice thing, but at the end of the day, it's going to burn you out, because the more people that hear about this free or cheap thing that you're doing, the more people are going to want that free or cheap thing, but the more time it's going to take away from you to build the long-term vision.
Exactly.
That's why, truth be told, there's no UMC anymore, and it's ECM, because I realized I needed a better business model that was going to build a more sustainable community, a truer community, and not burn me out like it had burned me out so many times.
Yeah, well, I'm in the process of doing the same thing. Like, I am rebranding, redeveloping EBCM, even to the point where I'm probably going to be changing the name as well, because I want to establish a new foundation that is growable, scalable, but not at my expense. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at right now with that with that business.
And scalability is the way. You know, like, we all, I think, have like the grand project that we just want to grow and grow and grow, like that creative project, you know, that, you know, in a perfect world would just kind of sustain itself. And like grow.
Wouldn't that be great?
Grow and run on its own. But like, the longer you're in this, like, you realize that's just not possible. But the great thing is, in this world, you know, not to say it's easy to scale a business, but you have more tools at your disposal than ever. You can connect to more people anywhere in the world who can fill needs that you have, and you can fill needs that they have, and you can work together. I learned a lot, you know, this past weekend as of recording, about the idea of joint ventures and teaming up, and like, okay, I have a service that's similar to your service, or that otherwise complements your service well. Why don't we find a way to offer these services together?
Let's build together. Because we're not meant to do everything on our own. It's not realistic. And, you know, if you look at any successful entity, it's a collection of people, of companies, of whatever that looks like, but it's never just one individual doing everything. It's not possible.
And I realized too, like, when I was in Denver, like, how big of a pivot, you know, that ECM is from UMC. And I realized that as I'm talking to people, and the feedback I'm getting is like, well, you've got something here, but you need help with it. You know, like, you can't build something scalable and be the judge, jury, and executioner, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whatever you prefer. Like, you can't do all the things and expect it to grow. There's just not enough hours in the day.
Nope.
You know, especially if you're bootstrapping it, like a lot of us are. Like, you don't have the resources, and you need the resources, you know, from your network, from the community that you've built to help grow this thing. And I think we're in similar places in our own ways where we've really come around to that lesson and realize, like, hey, there's no shame in asking for help.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Honestly, you have to know when to ask for help too.
Yeah.
And like, that's another hurdle that I've had to kind of, get over, is like, okay, set my own ego aside. And that doesn't mean I'm not capable, but hey, like, I'm not a professional at everything.
Right.
Especially business.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm learning, and the only way I can get to where I'm going is to ask.
Right.
So
and learn from the people who have been where you are, but who are a little further along than you. You know, I think that's such an important lesson, because again, like, our egos, I think, protect us and make us want to think we can take on the world and do all the things, but like, there's no need to do that, number one. And number two, like, you know, people are successful for a reason. So do everything you can to learn from those successful people. You know,
exactly.
If somebody's Ty Warner, actually, who's another collaborator of mine, told me, you know, not too long ago, if somebody wants to help you, let them. And that's stuck with me, because, you know, somebody's reaching out their hand, don't slap it away. Like, take whatever they're willing to offer you to help you get to that next step. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's part of their like journey and growth as well. You know, when you get to a place where you can help, not where you haven't set the boundary and don't know how to say no, but you're at a place where you've evolved, grown, put in the work, and you can help, then that's a part of where you're at, and like, that's growth as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I truly believe that's growth as well. So it's like, let us grow together. Yeah. And I think on the personal end too, like, you know, there's also a part of this where we really need to explore ourselves as well, and the ways we're showing up, the ways we'd like to show up in contrast to how we've shown up maybe in the past or we currently are, right? And so you've been on that journey as well the past few years, and we've had a chance to really dive into that in our sessions, where we have, you know, really explored like all different sides of who Shawney is. And I'm really excited for this, because not only is that going to be making its way into your art and your creativity and all the things that you do, but also doing that digging helps us understand ourselves better. Absolutely. Yeah. I think I've always kind of known the art I want to create. A lot of it subconsciously, like I kind of had to tap into it, but it's always been there. And it feels like the more we explore, the more we ask questions, the more we dig, I'm like uncovering or like pulling away these layers, right? And it's very freeing. And it's very like, I don't know the right word, but it gives me that permission to be myself even more, because it's just like I'm learning and seeing and understanding all these things that before, like, I may not have known, because I didn't put in enough effort and time to really know myself, right? You know, and I think sometimes that feels a little silly, because you're like, well, why do I need to do all this time for like self-exploration? Like, I've lived with myself all these years, like I know myself, all these things, but that's not true. Like, we have all of these situations that create trauma that a lot of times we don't even realize it, or we block, or we try to push away, and it stays with us. You've lived with yourself, but have you lived consciously with yourself? Yes. Like, do you understand your triggers? Do you understand, like, why do I feel this way when someone says this to me? You know, when you put in that work, that's powerful, because now you're not responding emotionally. You know, you're responding, you give yourself the ability and the tools to respond as yourself. And that's so powerful. Yeah. And exploring like the parts of us that are there to protect ourselves. Like we were doing some work on this last week, you know, as of recording, where it's like, you know, we're exploring two sides of you right now. I don't know how much on this you really want to give away yet, so I'm trying to be careful. But like essentially, like
this idea of yin and yang. You can't have the light without the dark and vice versa. You can't have the dark without the light. But why, is each opposite thing present in each side, right?
Yeah.
It's some kind of protection mechanism.
Yeah.
Our softer sides, our more reserved sides stay reserved, so we're not vulnerable, so we don't get hurt, right?
Yeah.
Whereas our bolder sides are there to assert ourselves, often to protect, the vulnerability that's in there that, that side of us doesn't let out. And I know, in particular, we had a particularly powerful session last week, exploring that and how that shows up in your artistry.
Yeah. So back in May, I did a EP release show, and I merged it with a fashion show that I've been wanting to do for a while. And the thought came to me, I want to call this and label this alter ego, because since I've started my journey, I feel like I'm very aware of these two sides of me that show up in different situations. I have, who I call Jade, the more dominant, seductive, confident, like shows up for anything, and then I have this other side, Shawney, who's still a little bit more soft and sensitive and, more of a introverted nature. But both sides have like places, and like, I can't be the artist, the performer, if I show up as Shawney,
right?
Because she's too soft and timid. But Jade has that all day, and that really was like made aware, like, to me during that fashion event, because I had these songs that were polar opposite. I had this very soft, like, sweet song called Feel You that was just about being afraid to be in love, because it just seemed too good to be true, and I didn't want to give in to that, and so I just wasn't going to think about it, right? And then you have this other song, Daddy Issues, that's totally in your face. You know what I mean? So it's like, I realized, I was like, wow, I have these two sides of me that both like exist together. One, I can't have one without the other. And it just really showed me that, like, we have these egos that aren't really a bad thing. Like, Jade is great, Shawney is great. You know what I mean? Like, both of these sides are me, and I really want to tap into that and explore that.
Right. And it's, how do you position each of those egos to help you show up in the best way possible? Because we all have egos, right? But it's how we manage that, that really, I think, dictates our relationships. It dictates, how successful we are in our creative and business pursuits. How we show up to life ultimately dictates, where we end up, right?
Exactly.
And something interesting you said there too was like, that idea of, love being too good to be true, because like, I think we all, encounter those moments where like, we want something in life, whatever it is. It could be a relationship, could be success in business and whatever. But like, when we're actually presented with that thing, like, we go and hyperventilate in the bathroom because we don't know if we're ready for it. Like, right. Speaking from recent experience, like, literally did that, but like, then we have a choice to make. Yeah. We can stay there hyperventilating in the bathroom, metaphorically or literally speaking, in my case. Or we can actually take that deep breath, take that pause, be like, wait a second, what am I scared of? This is what I've been waiting for the entire time.
Exactly. And we're all capable, and that Jade side of me acknowledges that, she's like, I got this. It doesn't matter if I feel prepared. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, I've got it, and like, even taking that a step further and like, and away from the performance side, like, Jade also protects, she's the protector. She's just like, hey, we need to set boundaries. Like, we need to focus on, what do you need? What do we need? Where Shawney is still a little bit more of a pushover in a little bit of a way. Like, she's probably more likely to say yes and not consider herself. Right. Whereas like, Jade's like, no, we don't have time for that. We've got things to do.
Right. And I think it's important too to like keep in mind, like, no side of us is inherently bad, right?
Yeah.
Until we start doing bad things with that aspect of ourselves,
Right.
as that aspect of ourselves. Like, there's great power to be had in this Jade persona. You know, it's powerful, bold, assertive, you know, like taking a stand for herself.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, managing how those actions maybe show up in, you know, Jade's relationships, you know, and like not going too far to where there's no consideration,
Yeah.
you know, and the other side, of course, the Shawney side, right? It's like, okay, that's not inherently bad to say yes and want to help people and have a heart for people, but don't go so far that way that you're not giving any room for yourself to grow.
Exactly.
And you're not giving any room for yourself to have what you want, because you need that. You know, it's that whole you can't pour from an empty cup thing.
Exactly. Well, that kind of circles back to like earlier we're talking about like knowing yourself, you know, so like this whole development of this ego is really just me learning myself. And like as I learn, establishing what I need and boundaries, but still staying true to that soft nature, that soft side of me, because I still value who I am as that person, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
But also in order to accomplish what I want to accomplish, I have to know myself well enough to set boundaries, and the soft side of me can't set those boundaries, you know, or she thinks she can't, you know, so I had to figure out like, okay, who do I need to be?
Right.
And it's still me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's important too. Not only realizing, but accepting that these are parts of yourself and accepting them as parts of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, through the platform that you're building, you know, through the artist personas that we've been working on, like it gives you the power to lead by that example. You know, something I found myself saying at this conference, which I keep referencing on this episode because it was really powerful for me, was like, you know, in order to inspire other people to do something, you need to be the lead off batter. You know, you need to step up to the plate first and do it and lead by example and set that tone. Because if you're out here trying to encourage people to embrace all sides of themselves, but you're not doing that yourself, then it's going to fall flat. And people aren't going to take that message seriously, you know?
Why would they?
Exactly. You know, so like, you know, for me, like, you know, pivoting from the UMC model to ECM, you know, we want to teach artists to be entrepreneurs. So I need to go where the entrepreneurs are.
Right.
You know, not to say they're not in the music industry, but like there are more of them out there than just in this industry. And this industry, let's be honest, doesn't teach us to be entrepreneurs.
Oh, absolutely not.
It teaches us you need to cater to the industry. You need to sound like this. You need to look like this. You need to be this young, or you don't have a shot. And the way most artists succeed, like I'm 36 years old, you know what I mean? Like the traditional industry wants nothing to do with me at this point. The way artists succeed is you go and you create your own platform.
You create your own lane.
Yeah.
And I think from my journey, my perspective, like I've realized like it's incredible to learn how to treat your art as a business. And that doesn't mean like you're not a creative anymore.
Right.
You know, like it absolutely does not mean that, but you have to learn what it means to be a business entrepreneur, you know, platform, because it's not just about, you know, making music.
Right.
And I wish it was, you know, like that would be super great, but like nobody's just going to show up and be like, you're great. Like, here's all this money and here's this team.
Right.
You know, like you have to take those steps and you have to go through the trenches for a while before things start making sense. And I think that's where a lot of artists, creatives, entrepreneurs get lost, because the trenches really suck.
Yeah, they do. They do. And there's a lot of misdirection. And frankly, there are just a lot of people giving bad advice out here too. But, you know, it also just comes down to, you know, what we were saying before is we'd all love, and you just said this again, like we'd all love to like just create the thing. Like how many artists do you know who have at one point or another said like, well, I just want to like write and perform and record. That's all I want to do. It doesn't work like that. I mean, it can work like that if you want this to be a hobby forever.
Right.
Then it can work like that. If that's all you want to do, awesome, more power to you. Obviously, you know, you're getting fulfillment in other parts of your life to where this doesn't need to become your career, right? But if you want to make this your career and you want to have an impact for what you do, and you don't have to be a musician, I'm talking as an author, as a speaker, as whatever, then you have to really treat it like a business. You have to wake up and you have to become obsessed with it.
Obsessed, and you have to learn how to be a business owner. That's like you're your own boss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like nobody is going to hold your hand. Nobody's going to tell you, you know, ABC, this is your checklist. This is what like, it doesn't really work like that. You know, I wish it did. And ultimately, like the best advice I've ever really received from somebody like being honest about the industry is there's not one set path. There's a million paths for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just have to figure out what your path is or what you want, like what path you want to go down, and then commit to it. And then if it's not working, try something else.
Right.
But it's just, there's not one set method.
Right.
And that's, I think, the scariest thing, because we
Mm-hmm.
feel like we might invest all this time and
Mm-hmm.
money and energy. And I've done that, you know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But the most valuable thing out of all of that is I got to eliminate a lot of things.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I know exactly what did not work for me this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this year has been my greatest success
Yeah.
because like I know exactly what I want to do now
Uh-huh.
and what path I want to set down now. And I can move with more intention and less uncertainty.
Absolutely. The best way often to find out what works is to first find out what doesn't work.
Yeah. Process of elimination.
And like to your point, there are so many different paths. Like, you know, the major label thing isn't for everybody, you know,
Yeah.
and like, again, you know, there are very few genres that even fit into that box now to where you're going to get signed and they're going to even invest any resources in you. Rock is, for example, is completely dead in the mainstream. And that's because the tastemakers make it that way. I was talking to somebody about like a sync opportunity, like a sync brief. And they're like, yeah, you know, they just don't want rock. They just don't want rock,
Interesting.
and we were talking about it. It's like, yeah, it kills me because like, you know, that's what I grew up with, but they just don't want it. And that's not to say you can't succeed as a rock artist. It's just, you're going to have to find another lane.
Yeah. You're going to have to find your audience.
Yeah. But they're out there.
They're definitely out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you've got to learn those business principles and you have to understand how to grow and scale and create value, you know, and really figure out what it is that you do through your artistry, through your brand, through your message, through everything that you're putting out into the world, whether it's music or, you know, anything adjacent. Like, how does that provide value or deliver the message to somebody in a way that nobody else can? It's like Dylan Huey said a few weeks ago on the show, that value proposition, really nailing that down. Who are you? What do you do? And how is that unique to anything else out there?
Yeah.
You know, what is setting it apart, you know? And it really comes down to figuring out who you are so you can present that.
So you can connect. So we keep going right back to that. Like, find out who you are so you can connect with your audience.
Yes.
Because if you don't know, how are they going to know?
And if you don't know, then you're just first name, middle name, singer, songwriter from anywhere USA.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I saw something recently, and I don't remember who posted this, but they said, as soon as it may have been you. That'd be really funny if it was. But they said, as soon as you take the I out of your post and you change it to you, now you're involving your audience.
Yeah.
And now you're connecting with your audience. And that really hit me because I've been really studying just like, how do I, you know, create my tribe as I'm building all this content and really gearing up for next year. I'm really like wanting to, you know, nurture and allow that connection. And when I saw that, I was like, that's so true, because it's not really about me. You know, as I'm putting out this music and sharing my art and, you know, wanting to create community, if that's my goal, it's really not about me.
Right.
So I shouldn't be saying I, me anyways.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was like, that's a really simple, but powerful and accurate post.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And once you do that, once you actually go to meet people where they are, you're going to see more people attracted to that. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I just noticed that myself, you know, again, another post-conference thing is like, I went back and just, you know, started working on the web copy for the coaching page on the website, you know, and I was looking at it and I had just written it in March and I'm like, I lead off talking about myself. I lead off talking about why I'm qualified to help you. Nobody cares. Nobody cares why I'm qualified to help you. They care about the results they're going to get.
Right.
And that's something that, like, again, there were so many amazing coaches that I had the chance to just like interface with and connect with and compare notes over the past week. And like, that was one of the key lessons in the value proposition piece is like, it's not about you. It's about what they are going to get from working with you.
Yes.
Or, in the sense of, somebody consuming art, like what are they going to get from the experience of who you are as an artist that they can only get from you?
Right.
How is it going to provide value to their lives and hit them in such a way that doesn't exist anywhere else?
Yeah, it stays with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so everyone out there, when you're labeling yourself a singer-songwriter from My Town, USA, you and everybody else, like,
Right.
it goes down, like, it could be that, it could be how you're putting yourself on LinkedIn. Oh, I'm the CEO of da-da-da. Well, okay, great. What do you do and why should I care?
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be that complicated. I think a lot of us get caught up on, well, I don't know who I am. I don't have a story, or like, I don't want to tell my story. I'm not comfortable with that. It doesn't have to be that serious. It could be you're connecting because you are funny, or it's just your personality. There's something like you can dig into that, tap into that. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I don't have a painful story, so I guess I can't.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's so many different ways to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what are you here to do and how does that connect to your audience?
Yeah, we all have purpose.
Yeah.
We all have purpose.
Yeah. I was challenged on Thursday night last week to come up with the what, who, and why, what I do. Because I'm a podcaster. I tend to get very long-winded, as you know. I love to talk. And so, like, I'm explaining, and they're like, no, put it here. And so, like, that was kind of what I left with, Thursday night, go back to the Airbnb. And then I just, like, out of a dead sleep, wake up on Friday morning at 5:30 with no alarm after only sleeping 4 hours and having maybe one too many beers the night before. And it was like, I got it. And I help artists become entrepreneurs so they can create the life they love. Boom. Why was it so hard for me to get to that? Sometimes we just need somebody to, like, bring that out and put, like, this is what it needs to be.
Oh, that was me with our sessions.
Yeah.
Like when we first started, I was just like, I know, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I know what I have. I know who I am, but like, I don't know how to articulate that.
Right.
And we had to work through that through just conversation.
Right.
And that, because of that conversation, it was like clear as day by the end of it. And I was just like, oh, like I knew that, but I would have never gotten to that point on my own.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And like, I think as people in the creative space, as artists, people in that world, like, things tend to be very flowery and verbose and like, conceptual, right?
Yes.
And that has its place in our art. But if you're trying to do business, you have to lead with business and then bring them into that, come up with a quick way to say it and then let them come in your world and explore what that actually means at a deeper level.
What does that look like?
Yeah. But if you're going to be throwing all these things out at people, it's going to overwhelm them and it's going to send them running for the hills. Like, you've got to really nail it first.
And it ultimately wastes your time.
Right.
And that's another lesson that I learned. I was just sprinting. I wanted to do all the things so fast, so quickly, without a game plan, without an agenda, without intention, And so after that thing was done, after that music video was done, I did like 3 music videos at once because I was like, I don't have any videos, right? And I invested all this money. I did all this choreography, like all this. It was amazing videos. But why? Like I didn't have a plan for any of them.
Right. Yeah.
And so at the end of it, I was just like, oh, so now what?
Yeah.
So it's just like learning it's okay to move a little slower.
Right.
It's okay to come up with your business plan first. And then be like, all right, now I have the plan. Let's go.
Yeah, because I think we feel so compelled to, I just need to keep making stuff and something's going to hit.
I just need to do things.
Something's going to go viral. Like, okay, can I just talk about the viral thing for a second too?
Oh, gosh.
Stop trying to go viral. Like, the thing is, it's okay to go viral. It's a good thing to go viral if you're prepared for what's coming after that.
If you're prepared and you know your market and you know your intention.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, a perfect example of that is Gail, ABCDEFU girl, right? Who is now touring with Taylor Swift. Well, a couple of years ago, right around this time, she played a show with us at Mercy Lounge. You will never get her for as little as we got her again. I mean, she did a great job. She sold that show out we got close to a sellout, especially considering it was like a pandemic era time and, there was all that stuff going on. But she already had signed to Atlantic. She was getting ready to go on her first like headlining tour at small venues out west and that kind of thing. 3 weeks after that show, that song goes viral on TikTok, but she already had the team in place. She had the record deal. Mm-hmm. She and her mom had been in town since she was 10 and she was 17 at that point, building up this ecosystem to support that viral moment. So then when it went viral, they had a plan for after. They had people in place to help her capitalize on that. And then by January, she's on Jimmy Fallon. Now she's touring with Taylor Swift and, you know, she's doing huge things. You know, and she's doing that though, because there was a plan.
There is a plan.
Yeah.
I have a story to kind of piggyback off of that where I did not have a plan and I was not prepared. Mm-hmm. When I first started on this, you know, artist journey, I was still very much shy, very much not prepared. And one of my mentors and very good friends, she had been pitching some of the songs we were writing together. And I, because of that, got the opportunity to perform one of my songs that we hadn't even recorded for MTV on their show Siesta Key. And so that was my very first performance. I wasn't ready.
First ever performance.
First ever. I had never been on a stage like that. And so it was a solid lesson because I wasn't branded. I had no idea what my genre was. No idea. Like I thought I wanted to do country. I didn't know myself well enough. You know, if you listen to my music now, it is not country.
I was gonna say I cannot imagine you as a country artist, and I don't mean that as a, like.
I have a song out there called Tin Roof House. It's country.
Really? Like the Shawney I know, like I would never imagine.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And that's why it's important to explore yourself, to know yourself. So that way what you're putting out is authentic to your like your true nature. Yeah. And so I am on MTV as a country artist.
Now if you go listen to Alter Ego,
you're gonna be really confused. But yeah, so the experience was wonderful and it really kind of propelled me to like self-exploration and ultimately led to me being like, okay, I need to figure out who I am. Yeah. I need to, not just for my own sake, but so I can create a brand, because the first question you're going to be asked when you're creating a brand is, who are you? I don't know.
Well, I'm just curious. Like, so why country? Is it because, well, I'm moving to Nashville, so that's what I have to do, kind of thing, or?
I grew up on a farm.
Okay.
Yeah. I also was raised very like strictly Christian, in a way where they were very anti-pop culture. So they didn't let us listen to music. We didn't have a TV, like all these things, right? And so when I had my crisis moment in college, when I was like, this isn't what I want to do, I want to sing, right? And so I just moved to Nashville without any plan. And in my head, what made sense is because I grew up on a farm, I must connect with country. Right. But I hadn't put in any time to really know.
I see.
So it was just kind of a like swing and a miss.
It's interesting how living in Nashville, known as the country music capital of the world, actually got you away from country.
Yeah. No, it's really funny. Yeah. And I still like, I don't not like country. I love the storytelling element of country. And I've actually written a lot of beautiful country songs. And I was trained when I first started writing in Nashville as a country writer. So a lot of that like writing format as a songwriter, like I kind of stick to structurally. But what I enjoy about kind of leaving that and like navigating more in like the pop R&B soul realm is like you have so much more freedom. You don't have to stay in that like structure, and you can kind of like explore. Yeah, because those genres meld with the other genres, you know, so much more seamlessly, and they can divert off into different directions, you know. I mean, you look at what Taylor Swift has done, right? You know, and she went from country, you know, pop country, depending on your definition of country, to, you know, straight up like stadium bangers, back to this kind of folky thing during the pandemic, now like this synth pop thing with Midnights, and it's like,
you can take it in different directions.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're pegged as a country artist, you never really leave that. And if you do, it's a messy split. Like look at Maren Morris right now.
Yeah.
You know, and leaving, for valid reasons, in my opinion, but like, it's this whole messy split. And like, once you like turn your back on country. Like,
and Cam.
Yeah.
Cam's another one.
Yeah. It's like people will then have nothing to do with you ever against, certain folks. So it's like, it's this messy, like it is kind of boxed in a lot of ways.
And that's my biggest fear as a creative is to be boxed in. And honestly, that's the biggest reason I realized I didn't fit in the country music world, is because the farthest thing that I want to be is like in this box, and it's like, this is who you are, because we all should be on a journey, and we should change, and we should evolve. And like, it's our right to be able to show that change and that evolution and that journey. And nobody really ever stays the same.
Right.
So and even with alter ego, like going back to that, like that was me being like, hey, like there's so many different sides of me, and I want to highlight that. Like I always want to highlight that to the point to where when I'm putting things out, no one truly knows what to expect.
Yeah.
But when they receive it, when they hear it, it shows where I'm at. Right.
You keep them guessing artistically, but it comes from the real place of you. And that's the thing. People connect to artists that they can relate to. Doesn't matter the trend, doesn't matter what they sound like. In a lot of cases, Taylor's another great example of that, where it's like her sound is literally, the Eras tour is every different era, each era being artistically, stylistically different, The common thread is her and how she's connected to her fans. Like she is a case study for this exact idea of like, show up as yourself and change the game, because she could have stayed in that country lane, but like she went pop, and she's taken a different direction since then. But to her fan base is there because of her and because of how her message speaks to them. Yeah. So I think that's just for any artist out there, like look at the people, not only who get to the top, but the ones who stay there. And Taylor Swift would be, where she is now with or without a label, as we're seeing, there was that whole battle over, the masters and the rights to the music and all that, to where she's now just re-recording everything. Like she's gotten to the point that I think everybody should aspire to want to get to, where she can go do whatever she wants, however she wants. And her fans are going to be there because of what she's done to build that base and the work that she's put in as a business person, as the person who's the face of that brand, to actually connect and build those relationships.
Yeah, there's two things you said that I really couldn't agree more on, is the business side of it. So again, that's so important. She's always been so involved with her own business, as you should be. Yeah. But also she has stayed true to herself. And I remember earlier in my own journey, I wasn't really a major Taylor Swift fan, and I'm still not a major fan, but I really have so much respect for her because she has stayed true to herself. And, I don't know her, but I feel like I do. Right. And if you're an artist or a creative and you can consistently create that kind of connection to where your audience feels like they know you and that you're being authentic, that's incredible. Right. And I think a lot of times, especially with social media, there's this level of disconnect where we don't believe people. We're just swiping and we have this sense of oh, that's fake. You're fake. This is fake. And it's just that's normal now. So when someone breaks through that and they're able to bridge that gap and create that connection, that is truly incredible. I feel like that's where you actually get to change lives. You get to become someone who is inspiring or inspired, you know, all of these beautiful moments that all because you decided to present yourself truthfully, authentically, and and through vulnerability.
Yeah. And, to your point too, you don't have to necessarily love every project somebody puts out, to respect what they do. Because like personally, like where I stand with Taylor Swift, I love her as a business person, think she's a genius. There are certain moments in the catalog where I'm like thematically, lyrically, the Reputation album is one giant red flag to me. Like, and I don't think it should serve as, something that, I would want my niece to look up to necessarily. But I will say this, as a business person and as somebody who has gone about her business in a certain way, Taylor Swift is absolutely somebody my niece should look up to. Like, look at how she's done it.
Yeah.
And like reverse engineer that and see what she's done and how she's connected. Because even Reputation, which again, thematically I'm a little iffy on, just as somebody who's been burned by that type of personality before, like she's communicated something to that subset of her audience who is, especially at that time, going through something similar and just wanted to like lash out and take for herself, like there is, that moment to speak to, I think in all of our lives, that human thing that we go through. And in that regard, I totally respect it. And you have to just really respect like her ability to speak to the moment and her ability to relate no matter what part of her audience or what emotion within her audience she's relating to.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm it's weird because I'm a big fan, but I'm not like,
I'm very conflicted about, about Taylor Swift. Like I have the utmost respect for everything she's done. I will say that. Do I necessarily like all of it? Like,
exactly.
No, but you don't have to. You know what I mean?
To. And I think there's probably like 5 songs that I'm like, love, but she has literally albums and albums out. So, so I'm like, yeah.
And I mean, I just trashed the Reputation album, but you know what song off that album is a banger? Is Endgame. I want that cheer in the future. I want to be Endgame.
Oh, yeah. That is a great song.
That is just a great pop song. Look What You Made Me Do, not so much. Anyway.
I think that song's so funny.
Don't come for me, Swifties. I just remember I remember seeing something when that song came out. It's like Right Said Fred made a MySpace bulletin about fake people because it's pretty much, it was co-written by the guy from Right Said Fred and it sounds like I'm too sexy.
Oh.
So I saw that meme. Look What You Made Me Do is like somebody wrote I'm too sexy, but it's a MySpace bulletin about fake people. The Swifties are coming.
They're
coming for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, you
I went too far there.
Lock your door.
Anyway.
Maybe change your address. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. You'll never find me. You'll never catch me alive. Anyway. Love you, Taylor. Mean it.
We're fans.
I'm proud of you and Travis Kelce. I'm rooting for you. Anyway.
How did we get on this Taylor Swift rant?
Because we're complex humans with a complex relationship with our overlord Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
She's everywhere.
She is everywhere.
Unavoidable.
I feel like she always comes up in conversation.
She does. Which is exactly why she's so great at what she does.
That's impressive.
I can't hate it. It's just like, I spent years hating Tom Brady as a Dolphins fan, but he's the greatest of all time. There's no denying it.
Okay. I probably won't have anything to add with sports. I don't know it.
But somebody's so dominant that you just hate them for being that dominant. And then like after a while, you realize why they're so dominant.
Yeah.
It's that thing.
Yeah.
So Taylor Swift is the new Tom Brady.
What?
I don't know. Anyway, back to why we're here. So all this wonderful stuff about, what you've put into just this discovery of yourself, discovery of your artistry. Take a few minutes before we wrap up to tell us where it's leading.
Okay. Whew. All right. How do I summarize? So the last few years, it hasn't even been that long, but it feels like it's been like years and years and years. But the last few years have taught me to slow down and to take the time to plan and prepare. So right now I'm kind of in my pre-stage of like releasing music. And so I'm in the studio, I'm creating content, and I'm really doing that business work in advance. And then next year, starting January, I'm going to be dropping different forms of content. I have a ton of singles that are going to be released, all under the brand of that alter ego, that yin versus yang. Like it's all going to be in support of that. And so I really want to build that concept in a way that really represents me, my egos, my journey, and my purpose. So I think a lot of releases, a lot of singles. But we're working on it now. So that way I don't feel overwhelmed in the moment next year to where I have that crash point, you know? So essentially, we're taking 6 months to prepare, you know, and that feels really good. That feels really good to have a plan, to be working on it every day, every week, developing a team, which has been my biggest struggle to date, is like allowing the right people to help, allowing for people to help and not feeling like, you know, I'm on my own or I have to carry it on my own.
And finding the right ones.
And finding, oh my goodness, I can tell you stories for days about letting the wrong people represent me. I had this real quick. I had this one manager. He brought in a team that misrepresented me so badly that it ended up with somebody who I didn't know, I didn't invite, come to the event and start a gang related fight by bringing guns. And my brand tag is light and love. So that's how far this person was from like my brand. And the reason I accepted his help, and it was we hadn't signed anything. Essentially, it's like, hey, if you want to manage me, you have to prove that you're going to be a worthy manager, essentially. And long story short, he did it. But it was just, I was so desperate for help because I was so burned out at that point, you know? So I was just like, whatever, like, let's do this. But yeah, just knowing who to trust, how to trust yourself, and when it's time to let other people in. And it's time for me. Like, I have put in that, you know, put in that time. I've put in that trial and error experience. And I have some really incredible people stepping up, you know, and wanting to be a part of it. And it's the right people, you know, and that would not have made sense like a year ago, you know, or 2 years ago, because I hadn't gone through enough struggle. I hadn't enough experience. I didn't know enough about myself, and I didn't know how to set up a plan and be the leader. You know, I didn't know how to be a leader. I had to really learn that. And the biggest lesson in that was like, okay, who do I lead? You know,
and I think too, when you don't lead, you're going to be led, and a lot of times you're going to be led the wrong way. You know, and you know, it goes back to that idea of, you know, you have to find out what wrong is to know what right is. And you've had that opportunity now to do that, and to really understand, like, okay, these people, these situations, like this whole thing over here is not for me. So I'm going to direct my compass toward what is.
And it's okay to say no to, like, we don't have to say yes to something that's not right for you. You know, and yeah, so next year I'm really coming at you with content, with music, and with a team and a plan. And it's going to be wonderful.
Stay tuned for all of that. Very excited. Shawney Rainne joining us here on the Quinn Spinn. Before I let you go, and before we wrap up, just give you a chance to tell us, not tell you, you know where they can find you online. Where can they find you online? I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah, so all of my platforms, handles, they're just my artist name and my name. So it's Shawney, which is SHAWNEY, Rainne, RAINNE, and that'll pretty much pull up anything you need to know. So Instagram, my website, Facebook, YouTube, it's all the same handle.
All right. Make sure you check out Shawney everywhere you can. Check out Alter Ego now, and stay tuned for more to come in 2024. And this has been the Quinn Spinn, 2 N's and Quinn, 2 N's and Spinn. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, and more. Also on Instagram at Quinn Spinn Official. Again, 2 N's in each, Quinn and Spinn. Facebook's been popping off a little bit, so you might as well just stick around there. We still need a TikTok. Working on that once I find a Zoomer to run it for me, because I don't want to. Also, look at ECM Collective on all the socials, Instagram, except for TikTok. Instagram, Facebook, X, which I'm not really active on anymore. Anyway, LinkedIn, YouTube, where you may even be watching this show. And if you are, subscribe, comment, like, do all the things. You can share on YouTube now, so do that. Share this episode wherever. Share it with a friend. Share it with your fellow Swifties so you can come burn down my house with your torches and pitchforks. Whatever gets us more engagement. Any publicity is good publicity, right? That's what they say. Anyway, I'm going to leave now. Revel 9's All I Become going to take us out like it brought us in. Grab some muffins on your way out.
Bye.